This time, I would like to call this meeting of the Templeton Advisory Committee to order. The Templeton Advisory Committee regular business is being broadcast live on TCTV Channel 8 and the TCTV YouTube channel. Responses will be made to comments in the TCTV YouTube channel as time permits. The agenda and meeting materials for this business meeting were posted to mytowngovernment.org/01468 no later than 48 hours prior to the scheduled meeting, in accordance with Commonwealth of Massachusetts open meeting laws. The chair reserves the right to add items to, remove items from, or change the order of the agenda. However, the agenda is posted in advance to give the committee and public time to review the agenda items and to ensure the meeting runs within the allotted time frame. At this time, I would call upon those present to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, within the agenda is the reorganization of the advisory committee. This is generally done the first meeting after the annual town meeting. I also wish to state that it is my intent to have a reorganization after the fall town meeting as well. So this is kind of a temporary reorganization. I do that. The main reason for doing that is we only have 3 people. We barely have a quorum, and hopefully by the end of the fall town meeting that we will have a full complement of 5 members. What I'm going to do to proceed is I'm going to list the position and ask for a motion in a second. And the first would be for the position of chair. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I motion that you will remain the chair.
And I second that.
Okay. And I would like to have a roll call vote. Oh, any discussion? Is there any discussion?
Nope.
Okay. Roll call vote, Jacqueline.
Yes.
Liz.
Yes.
I vote yes. Well. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion for the position of clerk.
Like the nominate. Jacqueline, if she'll accept it.
I will accept it.
And I will second that. Is there any discussion? Okay, there being no discussion. Call the roll, Jacqueline.
Yes.
Liz.
Yes.
I vote yes. Got all that written down?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then the next item is starting in September, the Capital Improvements Committee will meet. And also the Narragansett Regional School District Regional Agreement Committee will meet. At this time, I would entertain a motion for the Capital Improvements Committee.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I nominate Ms. Toth as the capital improvements liaison for the advisory committee.
Second that.
Oh.
You've heard it. Okay. And is there any discussion? I just want to say, I think you will do very, very well.
I hope so. It's, I have a steep learning curve across everything.
Okay, any further discussion?
I don't think so.
You all caught up with your notes?
Yep.
Okay, I'll call the roll. Jacqueline?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
I also vote yes. And the final subcommittee is the Narragansett Regional School District Regional Agreement Committee. I will be looking for a nomination.
Like to nominate Jacqueline for that?
Sure.
I'll second that. Yeah, and I just would add for discussion, Jacqueline served on that committee last year.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So
I
think
was
it's
not
a
aware.
Good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I already know what I'm
Yeah.
signing up for.
Yeah. Any further discussion?
I don't think so.
All-
Yes.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. And I forgot to co-chair. Liz, do you have any problem serving as co-chair?
I don't,
Okay,
just,
if you're uncomfortable with it, I didn't discuss this in advance with you. If you're uncomfortable, just leave it open until,
I don't care. I'm fine with it. I've
okay.
done it before, unless Jacqueline would like it, she's,
Maybe after fall,
okay,
someone else can take the clerk after the fall. We're gonna find 2 more people.
all right. So, yes.
All right, so,
You need a
okay,
second.
I will second that.
did I nominate? Did I nominate?
Yes, you did.
You did.
Did, okay. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the roll, then,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
I also vote yes. Thank you for taking that on such short notice.
No problem.
Okay, we're now reorganized, at least until after the fall town meeting. So it would be myself as chair, Jacqueline as clerk, with capital improvements and co-chair, and for the Narragansett Regional School Agreement Committee, that'd be Jacqueline.
That's great.
So. Okay, and I understand, even though we don't have a public here, that you wish to make
Yes.
public comment.
Thank
You
you.
can do it, you can do it from there or do it
Well,
as you choose. Okay, sure.
go from there. Bring up a chair. So,
Okay,
Liz Toth, Gray Road.
you've sat in there once or twice before.
Yeah, you know the smell.
Okay, what would you like to tell us?
So what I'd like to tell you is that because my husband, Timothy Toth, is on the select board. I contacted the Ethics Commission to find out, how does this work? Is it okay? Is it kosher? All of that wonderful stuff. What they advised was 2 different forms that I needed to fill out to have my appointing authority agree to it, which is the town moderator.
Right, this
In this
Graves.
case, John Graves.
So I assume you filled out the form and Mr. Graves agreed to it?
Yes, there were 2 forms I had to fill out. Because not only do we have the potential conflict of interest because of the finances. So basically what it means is that when there's any conversation about the select board budget specifically, I need to recuse myself. Okay. And then the second thing is just, everyone's aware, we're married, this is it, and we're very good about keeping things very, very separate. So, and that's basically it, this is my formal thing telling the world that I've held up the paperwork's been signed, it's been submitted, and we're good. So that was it. Thank
I
you.
appreciate you letting the public know. I do. But I would say I'm in a similar situation where I have an immediate family member on the fire department, and while I discuss issues that touch and concern the fire department, if there's a direct vote on the budget item or a direct discussion, I just recuse myself. And that appears to be a very narrow, I don't recall ever discussing the select board budget specifically, so you may never have to recuse yourself.
Yeah, maybe not. It's just during probably the annual budget review next spring. When we go to talk about the budget, if there's any conversation about the select board budget. What I was advised, I can vote on the entire budget. But I cannot on something specific to
Right,
the select board budget.
right.
So that's the biggest thing, and just, the advice that I make it very public, so here's my very public. And if anybody who's listening and watching, is going, oh, they're married and everything, half the time, our votes on town meeting floor cancel each other out, so. And it's been noted by a number of people. So we're very much individuals. So thank you very much for
Okay.
that. That was
Do
it.
you have anything further? You're all set?
I'm all set.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the review and approval of the April 3rd, 2025 minutes. And I would ask if the members have had a chance to
Just
review this.
9 pages.
I think you've had a chance to review it.
I did.
Wrote it, and just-
Yeah, a lot of my.
Well, I don't look at it that way. You're a citizen and a taxpayer, and you have the right to.
Yeah. She did an awesome job, so.
No,
Are you ready to entertain a motion?
I am.
Okay. All right, I move that we accept, the minutes of April 3rd as presented. And
I will second that. And is there any further discussion on the April 3rd, 2025 minutes? Jacqueline?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. And I also am ready. Okay, we'll call the roll, then, so, for the, approval of the, April 3rd, 2025 minutes, Jacqueline?
Yes.
Liz?
yes,
And I also vote yes. Nothing vote. And thank you both. The next item would be the review and approval of the May 6th, 2025 meeting minutes. And has everybody had a chance to review those minutes? This is the, for the public to know, this is the pre-town meeting. Is there any discussion?
I don't think so.
no, so move we accept the April, May
May 6th.
6th meeting minutes.
There a
as
second?
Presented.
Second,
Call the roll, Jacqueline?
yes.
Liz?
Yes.
I also vote yes. With the comment, I would like to make the comment again. Thank you for
Welcome.
really, I know it took you much time and effort to do this. So thank you very much. Before we go on any further, is I did not have a chance to bring this up individually. But Mr. Bennett, now the chair of the select board, he brought to my attention that there are 2 end of the year transfers that need to be made. And I did post a meeting today which is to have a meeting, a joint meeting with the select board Wednesday of next week to discuss 2 end of the year transfers. And I also added, and the reason why I'm bringing this up now is that I also added to the advisory portion of the joint meeting agenda. I also added to that item 7B on the present agenda. And I also added the HERO Act, which is under new business, I believe.
I think it's old business.
Old.
Oh, it's okay, yes, you're right. So I added that. No, I added that to the agenda. For next week, item 7B, the possible recommendation concerning interest earned from the town's invested funds. That was an item that Mr. Kaplis had brought up, and he was going to going to ask the town treasurer about that item and come up with figures, and he obviously has not had a chance. So I am asking going to ask that be deferred to the joint meeting of advisory and the select board next week. I think that they just should be involved in the discussion. I mean, we'll discuss it a little bit further when we get to that item. Going to old business 7A. So I just want to let the board members know, we are going to have a joint meeting next week. Look at the agenda, there'll be a few items that are on this list that will be discussed. So 7A, which is from quite a long time ago, discussion, review, and possible recommendation of the amount of free cash for the stabilization account. This is from an advisory meeting last October. This was an item that Mr. Kaplis is going to review. What I would like to ask tonight is if a member, and I am willing to do this myself, but I would like to review this and then come up with a possible recommendation at our next meeting. Is that agreeable?
Yeah. For the fall, you mean, or for next week?
Discuss next week. When's Wednesday night? Are you looking?
It's not, I didn't add that to the agenda. I was
Okay.
thinking of a meeting in July, when we meet next July, I could gather figures together and ready to discuss it, and then we can decide whether to make a recommendation or not.
Okay.
So what I would like to do is defer that. And then 7B, discussion, review, and possible recommendation concerning interest earned from the town's invested funds. This is an item that I placed on the agenda for the joint meeting. And what I did, this is the agenda that I created that was posted today. And if you look, that 7B is item 6. And this originally came up because we don't know at any one time how much money is invested. I know that we use Fidelity, but we don't know how much is invested at any one time. And we don't know, unless you really dig through the reports, we don't know what the return percentage of investment is. And there's also no year-to-date or comparison with past years. And I just feel that this should be brought before the taxpayers on a quarterly basis, and it should look just like a Fidelity statement or a Raymond James statement. I suspect that we have, I did the addition from the February or the March BVA, but it would appear that we have $3 million in cash that is either in short term or bank account, or it's in investment accounts. But it's a lot of money, and I think that it is very conservatively invested. And I don't think that's the way to go anymore. And the reason why I bring it up that way is if you have $3 million And if the return is 10%, which I think is very plausible, reachable, you would have potentially $300,000 of earnings on the invested funds. That's a possibility. And I would like to know the percentage, because if the percentage is actually, if it's 1%, then you only got a $30,000 return. And if it's, and I think that there are investment vehicles out there where actually virtually nothing is entirely certain in this world, but there are ways of investing money where you could get a guaranteed 10% return each year. One of the problems, of course, is that the higher the rate of return by percentage, it tends to be the greater the risk. So, maybe the funds are invested properly because although they have a low percentage return, it's very low risk. So that is why it was actually brought up at the capitalist and myself together, but I do think that it needs to be discussed with, at the very least, the recommendation should be, a quarterly, fidelity type statement accessible to all the taxpayers. So that's why it's there. And I also think that it's something that is a good topic for discussion at a joint meeting.
Mhm.
So I would open it up to, whatever, comments that either of you, wish to make, but that's my thinking on this particular agenda item.
Yeah, I think it's a good thought, and on the basis of when, because they come in, I believe, on a quarterly basis also to do their quarterly review, financial reviews and everything else. Each one of the teams comes through with the select board. So, your thought of having that review on a quarterly basis, to me, makes sense. That part of their quarterly report is to go through and do that. Now, as I'm thinking about that, the only drawback is it's usually for the prior quarter. So,
To look back.
yeah, a look back, which is an awful long time in finance terms.
Yes, it is.
I think it's an awesome idea. The more we share, the more we see, everybody understands what risk profile that the town is looking at, and how conservative. I'm sure there's a state law someplace that says you have to certain weight or something, but
I'm not so sure of that. And the reason why I would say I'm not so sure of that is little over 13 months ago, I visited the Worcester County Retirement Board, the Worcester County Retirement System, because I was trying to talk with them about moving the end date back from 2036 to 2040. Because what they have is Templeton and 111 other towns. They are on a catch-up pension funds at the earliest possible time, which is 2036, which is all well and good. But it could be pushed back in 2040. If it was, that would be a $400,000 savings per year to the town. And when I asked them, one of the things I talked to them about was how they invest their money, because 4 years ago, they had $600 million in the account, and today they have over $1 billion in the account. And yet Templeton has to, and I brought this up on public meetings before, but Templeton has to pay the same amount plus 10%, even though the fund has grown by a minimum of $300 million. To me, they have more than enough money, and that's what I pointed out to them. And they said, no matter how we invest it, there's bad years too. All right, there's bad years. And even by 2036, our projections show that all the retirement funds will be just 60% funded, as opposed to when they started probably being 0% funded. So I get that. And then I asked them, what was your return on investment, last year for 2023? And they said for 2023, which is a very good year, they obtained 11% return. And I'm sure that the town's invested funds have nowhere near an 11% return. And I'm sure that the Worcester County retirement system, I'm sure that they were a lot more aggressive than what you think a typical municipal organization would be.
I don't think it's okay in return.
Right.
I would too. I would too. You know, when talking with investment people, you know, one of the things that the town does not do, because they tend to be longer term, is that I don't know if any of the money is invested in annuities of some kind. There's all kinds of annuities, and some annuities are, you know, they're very safe, strong companies that back them, and they have a 12% return, guaranteed, you know, guaranteed return. You know, there's others that, you know, they might have more than 12%, but the company itself is very shaky. So if the company blows up, you're gonna, you know, lose the, you know, the guaranteed returns will be no more. And the other downside of annuities is that you have to have a long-term kind of contract, and if you withdraw early, there's very severe penalties. But having said all that, is why not have a slice of the funds? You know, like maybe you've got 3 million, there might be $3 million out there. Why not have a slice in the annuities? You know, maybe $500,000, you know, something like that. So,
Okay, maybe there is a. Kind of,
I just don't think we're doing it right.
sounds like it.
I just don't think we're doing it right, and maybe I'm all wet too, but we don't discuss it, and it just seems to me that, in my mind, if you got, you know, potentially several $1 million being invested, why aren't you talking about the return? And if the return is in the toilet, then should.
So. I think this is an appropriate question. What happens with the funds that we currently get, right? So whether it's 10 grand, 30 grand, whatever it is, does that go into the general fund or just stay in this other? Do you know where?
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. I don't think it goes into free cash. I think it, you know, might be reinvested.
Just,
I don't know, but that's one of the things that bothers me is I could find out if I dig through the annual report, dig through all sorts of reports. You know, engage with Holly, engage with the town treasurer, but I shouldn't have to do that. I should be able to open up the annual report as like a fidelity statement. You know, we had $3 million invested. You got $50,000 back, whatever the number is. This is how we did compared to the prior year. This is how maybe you can do a projection. We hope to do it, you know, forward. And here's how we have the money invested. And I've only seen once, and it was because I asked Adam. I've only seen the investment book once, and it's like a vanilla fidelity. It's very vanilla. And I suppose in municipal finance, maybe vanilla is good, but I think that we can do better. I just, you know, I was talking with my husband the other day about, he talked about on the budget process, little drilling down to looking at, you know, $100 post office box bid. He was, and they had to do it, and yet we have this money invested, and we don't know, you know, where they may, you know, what the return is. It's just, I don't know. The emphasis is.
It's all those little pennies add up.
Right, I'm not against, you know, I'm not against your
You have
husband.
a very valid point on, you know, we're looking at this, why aren't we looking at this? Let's go look at this.
Should have a printout like BVA
There should
a
be,
couple times a year.
there should be, yes, there should be. So, you know, this is the issue, and I would like to bring it up with the select board. I think that joint session, which we should have a couple times a year anyway, I think this is really something, you know, kind of toss about with, you know, with the members of the board. But don't, you know, don't,
I can't have.
don't go too hard on Tim about drilling down to $100.
No, we can't stay away from all those conversations.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, that's why we've been married so long. There's certain things we just kind of. No.
Right. But anyway, do either of you have anything more that you would like to say on this? Are you, you know, in accord and agreement that we should defer it? Okay. That's what we'll do. Thank you. The next item, 7C, I'd like to just take a couple minutes. But this is an item Jacqueline and myself and the other former advisory board members discussed. So I would kind of like to bring you up to speed on this issue. As you know, the previous, well, two previous, town accountants ago, was let go. And the reason for the termination of that person was that that the IRS fined the town $65,000 through what they felt was mistakes in I believe it was salary and wage withholding that should not have been made. And so the town was initially fined $65,000. And then in response to that fine, Adam asked the town council, and I believe the select board had a vote on that, was the town council wrote a letter to the IRS, which explained, all the reasons why, the town should not have a $5,000 fine for. Gist of the letter was that it was kind of a one-time occurrence. We've corrected what led to that mistake. Please show us mercy. And lo and behold, I didn't think they'd do it. I really had visions of us sitting right about now, talking about using the advisory fund to pay a portion of that $65,000. But luckily, the $65,000, that initial assessment of a fine was waived, like it never happened, which is a very good outcome for the town. But it brought up the discussion, and I was, at the time that I first learned about this, I was really astonished to learn that although the town treasurer is bonded, and I think there's a couple other town officials like the town Adam's position, town administrator, I believe, that the town treasurer was not bonded.
Mean the accountant?
I mean, I'm sorry, the town accountant, I'm sorry. So, I was really astonished to learn that. And I was also astonished that, the town could have spent $200 to $300 to bond this person. And then it would have been the bonding company that would have had to defend, against the $65,000 fine. Or if there had to be a payout, it would have been the bonding company that would have performed the payout. And also the bonding company could have chased, the former town accountant. So just to me, it's just a whole host of reasons why the town accountant should be bonded. And I brought this up with Adam, and I also looked around at what do other towns do, and it seems to run the gamut as to what other towns do. One town that I'm very familiar with, because a good friend of mine is the town official there, is Upton, and I've mentioned that before. They have a whole finance department, and it appears that everybody in the finance department is bonded. And the finance department includes the treasurer, the collector, the accountant, and all their support personnel. But again, Upton is a very wealthy town, and but still, it's just a few $100s to do that. So that's how all of this came about, was because of the fine. Is that a pretty fair?
Yes, that's exactly it.
We've
Yep.
discussed before.
So, I attend most select board meetings. And in that, there was a conversation within the select board, one of those public conversation, that about the bonding of the account.
Because
Because my memory though said that it wasn't a couple $100, it was significant change. So maybe there's different kinds of bonding, I don't know.
I think
but,
there is.
okay.
And I really don't know the exact ones. I really don't. I mean, I looked at a table. It looked like it was in the $200 to $300 range. I could be absolutely wrong. But I really think, and the reason why it's on the agenda, and just what I'm requesting is that we write a letter of recommending, to write a letter to the select board recommending that the town accountant, that the select board explore bonding of the town accountant and any other town official who the select board thinks should be bonded. Again, I was really astonished to learn that the town accountant was not bonded, because they can cost the town a lot of money if they don't do well. So I would just like to open this up to further discussion. Do you have any thoughts, Jacqueline?
No, I agree with you that it should be explored. For sure, and other positions as well, like you just said, that Upton has everybody in that office, you know, where we only have possibly the town administrator and the treasurer. I'm sure there's other positions that would benefit from being bonded as well. If something were to happen and black swan event, or who knows, you know?
I like that term. I like that term. But I just think if it's just $200 or $300
Right.
to add an individual, then it's kind of a no-brainer to have multiple people who
Yep.
touch money or, make decisions. At the very least, even if it's a couple $1,000 or significantly more than a couple $100, then I think the town accountant at the very least should be bonded.
I mean, you can make, I think, a similar argument, which I realize is outside the space of the town itself, is both light and water. And there are folks over there that are also handling money and handling the finances and stuff, which, as I said, is kind of beyond stuff what it does, but.
But they are town officials. I mean, yes, their actions are governed by a separate mass general law statute, but ultimately, the buck falls on the select board and the town itself.
So I'd add them to the list then.
Okay. All right, so what I would like to entertain a motion, and you can chime in and change it if you want, both of you, is the motion I'm thinking of is to recommend to the select board that the town accountant be bonded. And that the select board takes steps to determine what other town officials should be bonded. Now, would you like to add anything to that, or?
No, I think that pretty much does it, so I'll say so moved.
I would like to add that it only be signed by you, so it
Yeah.
keeps things moving.
Okay, all right, with Liv's given a chance to review the draft, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna sign it, we're having a chance to review.
No, I mean, basically, it's pretty straightforward, so I'll say so moved again, I will. Remove
Okay.
the first one, the second one,
All right, you wish to second that?
Yes, second.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote, Jacqueline?
Yes.
Liz?
yes.
I also vote yes. We'll work together on a lot of. We'll try to have it by the middle of next week, and we'll give you a chance to peek at it. Any revisions that you want to make, we try to collaborate on things like that. So. Okay, thank you. I think we had a real good discussion on that. So. Okay, the next item is item 7D, the HERO Act. Again, earlier I asked both if we could defer this to the joint meeting next week. And I'd like to just provide a little bit more detail. Is I don't know if you had a chance to read the text of the Hero Act.
No,
It's a very, very comprehensive. And really requires a lot of implementation at the local level by our town officials. And, yeah, the main town official or officials involved with this would be the assessor's office, Justice Graves. And we've deferred it several times. And the main reason why we have deferred it several times, we first brought it up, I believe, last October. And it was deferred again, I think in January, and then again in April. But the goal is to make sure that recommend that the town implements this the Hero Act properly. That's number one. And then number two is that there are also, I believe, particularly with a property tax exemption, that there are different levels that a town may approve other than a certain minimum level. And it's probably ultimately a select board decision or possibly also an annual or fall town meeting decision. But the reason why this particular item has appeared, again, it's the act is being rolled out. It's probably a 2 to 3 year period for it to be rolled out. The concern of the prior, advisory committee was, to make sure that the town has complied with these provisions of the Hero Act.
Mhm.
So, that's the reason for this. So my question at this time is, do either of you, are both of you okay with this being deferred to the joint meeting of the select board next week?
I think it's appropriate to do that. A couple of things that not understanding the content within it, but it sounds like it's about the veterans, so you need the BSO officer involved and also, justice, and then I'm assuming there are funds involved and there'd be an overlay, I'm assuming.
And that's the problem. You've touched on exactly the situation is that you have the assessors involved, you have the veteran service officer involved, you have the town treasurer involved, and you have the town accountant involved at a minimum. And that's, we're a small town, and it's one of those things that can very easily fall through the cracks.
And I do believe that if I remember correctly, Mr. Moser was concerned about what the impact could be financially to the town, what we might potentially lose, because if we weren't going to get reimbursed at a certain percent. And there's a lot of unknowns surrounding that as well.
And this is the unknown. I believe Mr. Kaplis has mentioned the figure of within Templeton, there's over 500 veterans.
There's a lot.
A lot, and a large percentage of those veterans own homes. And so the exemption can be moved up or down. And so obviously if there's potentially 200 or 300 homes, property tax bills involved, that's a significant percentage. And then it becomes, what is Mr. Moser raised, what is the effect, a very large effect, budget being tight. I mean, you certainly want to help the veterans, but you also don't want to, put the town finances underwater. So
if they get if someone is able to get an exemption, right, in part of the property taxes, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that ties into the overlay, the amount of overlay money that the assessor's office has that ends up getting applied against that. So if they have, I'm making up numbers here, if they have
I understand what you're saying.
right, and somebody gets $1,000 exemption, right? I'm assuming, like I said, I didn't look at this, so it's all assumption here. That then $1,000 would come out of the overlay account to pay that money.
Which would lower the overlay
And which
account.
would lower the overlay account, yeah.
Exactly right.
All right. got
So
it.
if you're taking for example, $200,000 all of a sudden out of the overlay account, that's a huge hit. Now, so, but if you're only taking, $35,000 out, that's a lot different than 200,000, so, and it's really, there's a lot of moving parts here, so. So are you both okay with deferring that?
Yep, okay.
Okay, that's what we'll do. We will defer that and,
We don't need to, yeah, I don't think we need to vote on it.
no, we're just deferring it. And I gave you a copy of the meeting,
Yeah.
proposed agenda. It's on that agenda. Okay, all right, 7E, discussion and possible recommendation concerning a 5 to 10 year financial plan for Templeton. I think all of the members of the prior advisory, and I think a conversation too. I think we were all in agreement that the town needs some kind of a 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, whatever length of time. That it would help. That would help us. Should there be a bit of an override, is to show how it fits in the plan. And we don't seem to have a plan. It seems to be year to year. But so I think we're all in agreement that a plan of some kind that this.
Yes.
Okay.
This is.
Would you like to talk about this?
Yes, because it
Okay.
would either fall under this one or under new business. I'm not sure where. So this is an example. So for anybody who's at all interested, can't really see too well here, but so.
We're gonna include this in the
Yeah.
record of the meeting,
Yes,
so the public
please. Can see the whole thing.
Yes.
So what I did was, I took a look at the budget books, right? And what's in front of us is I didn't mean to pick on anybody. I just took the
Example of the account.
the example is the accountant. So I looked at their fiscal year rate in hours and the fiscal year 23 budget. And then I took the FY 24, FY 25, 26, and then projected out FY 27 and 28 is what I did. Okay, now, it can be more years, less years, whatever. What my intent of this is to provide sort of visibility into how the money is changing and how the costs are changing from year to year.
With the Prop 2.5.
Because with the Prop 2.5. So what I did was I started with FY 23. And I said, all right, so here's what was budgeted for FY 23. These are all budgeted numbers. I didn't look at actuals. And then what I did was I took the FY 24 amount and did a total and ended up with a 0.034, basically a 0.4% increase from FY 23 to FY 24, assuming I did my math right.
Yeah, very small increase.
Well, but it's more than 2.5%. So
Oh, okay,
yeah,
yeah.
okay, so it's more than 2.5%, right? And then I did the same thing comparing 24 to 25, 25 to 26. And in 25, FY 25, it's 0.0488, which is basically 4.9% increase. All right, which is more than 2.5%. And then I did the same thing for FY 26. And then I said, all right, so based on the number we come to in FY 26, I then took 2.5%.
So I'm sorry, the FY 26 wages, this one was passed at the annual town meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the budget, that was the budget amount. And so it was 141,934. And then I multiplied that by 2.5%, got to 145,492.
27, yeah.
Yeah, for 27, multiplied the 145 by 2.5%, came to 149, and did the same thing with FY 29. And so
We're going ahead 3 years.
I only went ahead. I didn't have a lot of room.
You ran out of paper.
Ran out of paper, right? And I wanted it so people could actually read it. And, and then going backwards, I was a little surprised at the numbers of the increase, the overall increase. And I'm looking at the accountant, assistant accountant and the floating hours. And I was surprised at the increase, percentage increase.
13%,
Well,
something like that.
I didn't do the math that way, but yeah, I guess that comes out 3, 4, 8, yeah, roughly.
Now,
And
is this a union or a non-union?
I have no idea. I didn't look at that. I was
Okay.
just literally taking,
Yeah.
The numbers.
No,
And
because
the
if
numbers
it's a
that-
union agreement, it may have been, well, looking at
No,
this, it may have been
maybe.
a 3, 4, 5% or something like that.
yeah, no, it wouldn't be. I don't think it would be because I think the town accountant had a contract. I don't think they're not part of a union. The town accountants.
Yeah,
So, and now,
salaried non-union.
yes, now we're non-union, and now we have Aponte and Fonte filling that role. So what I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is that, yes, it's great. We have this wonderful, very thick budget book that has lots and lots of stuff in it, but we have nothing to compare against. How are our numbers changing from year to year to year, right? Now, you can't go back and change anything in the past, right? But it kind of tells us the story of what we have been doing. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that we're a little tight, financially in town. When it comes to the budget and what's happening with it, and we need to take a closer look at how we're spending the money. And in what areas, and, and this isn't against any position, any department, anything, it's just overall. What are we doing historically? How have we been spending our money?
Well, it's kind of like the invested funds. If
Yeah.
you don't have anything where you can very quickly look at the book and say, this is what we pay the accountant, what we are paying the accountant this year, this is what we did the last 5 years, this is the projection for the next 5 years.
Right.
We
And-
don't have that.
We don't, and by not having that view, I think we're kind of blind to where we need to go. And how, where do we need to make adjustments? Maybe, we go, yep, okay, if we do a little bit of rearranging of things, we're okay. Or we may go, all right, this is, folks, we need an override, maybe, I don't know. And I'm not saying we do, I'm not saying we don't, I'm just saying I think we need more analytical data. So, and this was just an example of one
One person or
One.
one small department.
one small department, one small section, and that was it. I was just surprised at the numbers.
You have for the accountant for the rate per hour for FY 26 is lower than 25, is that a
Yeah,
typo?
no, it's not a typo.
Really? Okay.
I looked in the
Wow, okay.
budget book, because
That's a-
that's exactly what I'm
That's,
going.
yeah, that's
That's a big,
a big number. It's like $15 an hour.
Yeah, difference, and I don't know why. What I didn't compare, because the accountant, based on the budget, is flagged as salary. So I don't know if somebody backed into the number to get to the hourly rate or not. I'm not quite sure what happened and the number of hours and, did the person get more hours or what to lower the hourly rate.
maybe they got the lower hourly rate, but we're
Yeah.
committed to working at overtime.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah.
I don't know. And this was more just an exercise of, hey, let's see what it's doing and what's going on with it. So,
I think what bothers me looking at the town. Seems like some people have contracts and some don't,
mhm.
and I have a real problem with that. I just,
I do.
you know what I'm saying? There seems to be a lack of consistency, and I understand that you need to let, the town administrator have flexibility. The select board have flexibility, which is probably why you have that $15 an hour difference, maybe the replacement candidate, just had, skills that justified a $15 hour,
But if you look at the actual,
but it's not
Annual?
consistent.
right, and you look at the annual rates are higher. Because when I looked at it, I'm going, oh, wait a minute, this is 50. Wait, this doesn't make sense to me. Something's wrong here. And I didn't figure out what was wrong. I just put the numbers down on a piece of paper. And I'm in agreement with you about there doesn't seem to be a really strong rhyme or reason as to who gets a contract and who doesn't. We've got Jacoby did a wage and audit review a number of years ago. And very nice review, a whole bunch of draft job descriptions. They went through this long, they kind of explained everything they did. And thank you very much. Sits on, and it sits on the shelf.
But
Right.
that's the way
Yeah.
these things end up anyway. I mean, I used to find that in private industry, that those things would just get,
And I would like to see those used, I would
yeah, you
like,
spend a lot of money to a consultant, you
Well,
might as well use it.
exactly, don't just tick a box. I personally don't think it's fair that some people have contracts and some people don't. There's a difference with unions. I get that's a different, it's different, right? But for everybody else, my personal belief is that all of these employment, I'll say agreements, need to be very standardized, because why does this person get this extra benefit and this person doesn't? What warrants, did they negotiate better? Is there something else that's going on, that this person gets more and this person doesn't? And, I'd like to see it.
Well, the basic
uniform.
problem as I see it is, and this comes out of push-pull between, the town administrator and the select board, or in other towns, town manager, select board, or is you want to give the town manager, town administrator, whoever, you want to give them authority to negotiate wages and contracts. Because sometimes they're gonna do well and sometimes they might not do well, but and then, but on the other hand is how much authority is the right amount of authority? And then, because if you don't have enough authority, you get the problem that you described, where you're kind of all over the lot. And we're a wage and hour study is supposed to correct that, but unfortunately, in the real world, they always seem to get ignored.
There's some
So
towns,
how do you split the apple, or that's my question.
if I'm really, if you're asking my opinion, my
Oh, yeah.
opinion. My opinion is that the town needs truly following a wage and compensation plan, whatever it looks like, and that you have people who fall under union contracts, right? And then you have everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And in those, in that study, he tried to provide some of that kind of information, but it was just never acted on. And I believe that Templeton is an equal opportunity employer. As such, there's certain things that Templeton needs to be doing. And in Massachusetts, there's now a state law that basically says when you post a job, you have to give it a range of expected pay. And that has to be part of the job posting.
Yeah.
Right, which would tie back to the compensation plan, right? And if it's a standard compensation plan that's part of the budget every year, there's no question about it, because you have
There's
steps.
a range, that's it.
This is the range, here are the year, X number of years, this step, and whether, if you're a laborer in DPW, if you're a laborer in Parks and Rec, or cemetery, right? This job, because basically, all right, I could be very wrong here, but more or less they kind of do the same sort of things, right? There may be some caveats here, right? But you put that in place, right? And then it's fair for everybody. Everybody gets treated the same, it's fair. Now, can you have other things in there that you've got somebody who just goes above and beyond all the time? Yeah, you've got a plan to provide a bonus or something. You know, whatever is appropriate and legal and everything to be able to handle that. And the idea is to get everybody on an equal, even footing. It doesn't matter if you're a guy, a gal, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, and it's fair.
I think just to be devil's advocate here is, you know, one of the things that we did do every couple of years is do comp of comparable towns. And the basic problem that I see is that you have one of the comparable towns that Templeton's kind of hit or miss as to whether they make the market. And I suspect that if you had a range that was, you know, a third party, not knowing anything about the town, they create the range, it would probably be far higher than what we pay our people. So if you're confronted with having, you know, say for argument's sake, is you have 20 employees and the outside firm, you know, decides, well, this should be the range, and the existing range is different.
That's when you develop the plan, that 5-year plan that we talked about. To get everybody there. You know,
Yeah.
if you don't start working on the problem and the solution, you're never going to make any progress.
I
So,
would agree with you that there's a problem where, you know, folks being underpaid. And also, you know, setting the range, you know, you want to set the range so the employee is paid fairly, but you don't want to wreck the town budget. And that's the, that's the push and the pull.
exactly, it is the push and the pull, you know, but if we look at it and say, all right, this is where the town is today, right? This is where the pay range is today. Typically, we're on the lower end of things, right? We become I'll say a early career opportunity for a lot of people. You know, we give them a lot of training, we give them a lot of opportunity. They don't get paid well, and they take that opportunity, training, and go off someplace else where they get paid much better, right?
Yeah.
And there's a cost related to it that
It's a huge cost,
you don't see, right?
huge
And
cost.
and you lose not only really good people, right? Town employees are good people. They work very hard, they're very dedicated, they deserve to be compensated appropriately. But how do you get it there, right? So you have a 5-year plan, you have a 10-year plan going, all right, we no longer, you know, maybe the goal, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
is we say, all right, we know we're here, right? And we want to become more of a middle tier on our compensation. If that is the agreed thing, you know, advisory stuff, everybody that's involved with it, right?
Kind of chip away at it year by year to get to the middle of the tier.
Yeah, exactly, over time. Now, you know, I mentioned the nasty 2.5, you know. But that is one way of addressing it. Is saying, you know, are people on board with us doing this? You know, as a town, you know, do we want to do this as a town? And this is what it's gonna cost us, and so we chip away at it a little bit. We chip away at it in a bigger chunk, or multiple chunks. So,
I you know, I have discussed publicly and privately is that the town should do, you know, what the city of Arlington does is that every 4 years they have a Prop 2.5 override, and it's just baked into the budget, and that's what they do. And as long as you have 2.5, which when you have a high inflation like what we've had for the last 3 years, it doesn't work anymore. It really only works about and the inflation rate is less than 2.5%, then it's easy, but you know, and when it's 10% the way it has been, it's very hard to make it work. And there's no mechanism, we don't have a mechanism to have Prop 2.5 overrides on a regular basis, yeah,
Yeah, but
and we should.
we should. I'm not sure I read it correctly, but I think there is a mechanism that if we want to put money towards a specific project, a specific thing, right? That it's a 2.5 override for a specific, so for example, if the town decided, we just want to fix all the roads,
Right,
right? All of the roads, just all of them,
fix the roads, and eventually they'll go away, and
right?
you're talking about it going away rather than being permanent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, and it goes into a special fund, and that's where it comes out of, is out of that fund. It's,
We
Yeah.
could use $30 million just to keep our roads up to date. And have a fund, I privately talked about that, the idea of, well, the Lunenburg did that, I think they floated a bond issue of, multiple millions of dollars. The roads are good.
so, to keep some target here.
Yeah.
Uh,
What would you, I guess my question is, what would you, how would you like to move forward? And Jacqueline, maybe you can, if you have any ideas, how do you think we should move forward, or what should make towards that end? Because the idea is very good, and I like the idea of chipping away to get everybody to mid-tier, and mid-tier in looking at the other comparable towns. There's 12, 13 comparable towns. We provided that list to the select board. And it's very revealing. You look at what similar size towns, have police, fire, and overall debt. It's I guess my question is, how do you feel we should go about it? Should we, I think one way that it could be done is to look at the comparable towns. But maybe break it, really drill down as to, well, for example, how they pay the accountant. And then, what the low range is, what the high range is, and what the middle tier is.
Those comparable towns, how many have had like overrides recently? That would be something to look at too. Or are in an override crisis, like you have to do it next year type deal, like we're kind of leading towards.
What's interesting, when I've looked at the comps, I've looked at the comp towns, and even though the 10 towns are selected because they're similar in population, there's a geographic, part, we try to have towns that are in central Massachusetts as opposed to eastern Mass, which is, you look at a comparable town, well, Upton's a comparable town, but their median income is double that of Templeton. So they can afford all sorts of debt and services, and they don't care. They just spend like, they spend like there's no tomorrow. And so that it's not a good comp town. And we eliminated them. I think we eliminated them as a comp town. But Orange is very close as a comp town. Athol's somewhat close. There's Montague, the town that's been close. But every town has a little bit of, a little tweak that makes it a little bit different.
all you can do is say, all right, across all of these, this is roughly.
The average.
Yeah,
This is the average. Yeah.
I mean, there's a book called How to Lie with Statistics. That's been around forever. It's an honest book. It really is. It's out there. But it basically goes through and explains how, depending upon how you want to present the data, you can get a completely different answer. Completely different. So,
I'm sure you can.
Average, medium, just those are some of the general things. I think it's worth having the conversations as far as what does the town want to do? What is the town's appetite for some of these things? And and the other things you know, we get a look at, and it's going back to the overlay conversation. Is that there's gotta be a way where as a town, we can raise the taxes we need to raise without super adversely affecting the finances of those that are in fixed income, right? And there are multiple methods that the town can take into account and can utilize. Mr. Bennett, you know, the chair of the select board has brought up a couple of different things in some of the meetings about some of the things that he would like to see done. I think it's room to have those conversations. But there needs to be an agreement that as a town entity, this is the direction we want to go in. Everybody needs to be going in the same direction. And, you know, for their contracts, you know.
Can I suggest this? Can I suggest this? Why don't we do this? Is pick a number of comparable towns, so like we generally use 10. I think for the peak or the look, you'd probably be somewhere between 15 and 20 towns. Because you eliminate the outliers, and if you have 15 to 20 towns, you probably get a very good indication of what the mid-tier, the typical number would be. Compare that typical number to Templeton.
So generally speaking, yes. The actual look at those things, are you saying just look at some of the key positions? Are you talking about looking at? You know,
What I would be looking,
or what do you?
maybe we can do this, you know, there's three of us. It's, you know, it's a lot of crunching, is that maybe we can do it over a period of 3 or 4 months. And pick 15 to 20 towns. And then, you know, just kind of go department by department. As, you know, one person take, you know, the accounting or finance department, another person take the DPW.
I can't have the slide.
All right, well, we won't, no, we won't, you know, we won't put you in that bind.
My other thing is like comparable towns is like, do these towns have businesses other than like a Cumberland Farms and a Dunkin' Donuts? Like,
Well, you know, it's very interesting with the 10 comparable towns that, you know, John came up with. It was very interesting is, all of them, had, about the same percentage of residential property taxes as Templeton. In other words, they're in the 85 to 90% residential and 10 to 15% range for businesses. So, and of course, if you look at 20 towns, you're gonna have an outlier where, well, you know, they got 40% businesses and 60%, you know, residents. So, you know, you kind of got to toss that out. If you have 18 other towns that are, you know, pretty close to that.
And is the goal to say, this is what we think the range should be, or is the goal just to say, hey, this is where Templeton sits compared to everybody else?
I think you can do both. I think, you know, for every town, like every single town is gonna have an outlier of some kind, like Montague reviews that as a comparable town. But they have an enormous amount of municipal debt because they, you know, they did, you know, a public safety complex. And so, you know, they really, you know, it was millions of dollars that they bonded. So their bonded indebtedness is really up there. But, you know, I think if you look at enough towns that you'll find a range of those towns, and then you can plug in Templeton's range. And you can present that, you can present that either to the select board or some kind of public presentation, or just, you know, have it out there for the public to look at. It just says, these are the comparable towns, this is where Templeton stands.
we're all
This is the
struggling.
This is the direction that we should go at in 5 years. You know, we can do that. I really, you know, the longer I've sat, you know, on advisory, the more I've come to appreciate, comparable towns, because a lot of the other towns have done the same exercises that we have done, so kind of borrowing their thinking.
Yeah,
You know, you really are, you know,
Yeah.
you really are. And if you look at it enough, you know, one of the things I look at, payment in lieu of taxes by municipal light and water companies, and there's 42 in the state. And I looked at all of them, and because there were people saying at town meeting, and myself saying, gee, they're not paying anywhere near enough in payment in lieu of taxes money. But when you look at what they did, they kind of fall in the middle, what they've done, they kind of fall in the middle, and the middle that they fall in is really, it really matches the size of the operation and the number of employees that, that they have. But I had to look at all 40 of them, and they had an outlier, like the town of Hull, they gave, a year that Templeton gave maybe $30,000 or $40,000. Most of the other towns like Ashburnham, I think, gave $60,000 in pilot, but Hull gave $200,000 in pilot. They were the outlier, so you have that.
But that's, yeah, I think we're on the same page, is that we need to do that because I don't think anybody has really solid idea of where the town sits financially and what attracts employees to us, what doesn't, what do we get? What is I'll say the Templetonian lifestyle, and what is it? And what makes Templeton special? Is there things that does make Templeton special? And it.
Well, you have things, you have things like 30% of the population are elderly, like myself, fixed income. And, the reason why I think the town really struggles with 2.5 overrides is, because of that population. When you're elderly and on a fixed income, but you still own a house, additional property taxes hurt, where that might not be present. But so that's kind of negative, but the positive of that is that Templeton is only using, I think the latest figure was 43% of its levy limit. So in other words, we could more than double our property taxes and still not have reached the levy limit. So then the question becomes, what do you do? There's all this excess levy capacity. It's huge. It's huge. When you look at the comp towns, I don't think any of the other comp towns are anywhere near that. It's a huge figure. And you have lower taxes, but you also have, a level of services that match the lower taxes.
Yeah. So, yeah,
So you can raise the taxes in theory, but you have elderly people
that can't afford,
can't afford it.
literally can't afford the taxes to be able to stay in their house.
Right.
And
And that's a big problem. I mean, it really is kind of one of those silent problems, but I think it's a big problem.
Well, that it also is a problem because then they'll leave. And then who's moving into the houses? Not more elderly.
No.
Yeah.
Families. And then what does the school look like? And then we're back at, it's just
Yeah, you're chasing your tail.
exactly.
so. Yes to all of this. I think this is great. I think we should do this. The other thing on the taxes is, and I mentioned again, Mr. Bennett had, made some suggestions. And based on what he has said in a few select board meetings that, this is, he has some ideas,
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? Why don't I'm willing to do this. I could talk with Mr. Bennett about some of the things, because I've talked with him before, and Mr. Bennett has very interesting, thoughtful perspectives on some of these things. Is if this is agreeable to both of you, is why don't I talk to Mr. Bennett about what he's looking at, and I'm willing to come up with a list of comparable towns. And I'm also willing to come up with like a grid matrix of all the different things, all the different things to look at.
Okay.
As far as the different town positions, and then what we could do is we could divide it up, initially among the three of us, hopefully get a couple more members, and then just kind of chip away, and work on this, and hopefully have something in time for budget season and midwinter. Just have a matrix, comparable towns, that's the whole thing.
Present a slideshow on in the 8-hour budget
Oh,
hearing.
maybe we could, maybe we do a PowerPoint. Maybe we do a PowerPoint presentation.
And then be like, it doesn't look so bad here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It doesn't look so bad.
I can say something, well, this is Liz worked on this department, but she talked about statistics lying, so.
Yeah, actually, there's a book called How to Lie.
I'd like to read that book.
It's a very thin book. It's a very small book. And basically all it talks about is how to punch.
Yeah,
And it just makes it, it's a very old book. It's been in print for years and years and years. I actually came across the book in my statistics class from college. Yes, I still use some of that stuff many years ago. But it just makes you more aware of things. And we have to start someplace. The only way we can move forward is we have to understand where we are today.
Yeah.
And
I think we could, I think we could end up with, compounds, we could end up with.
Yeah.
Comparing the positions and doing it over a 10-year period. I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of numbers, but I think if we did that and had that, ready to go to be distributed, to the select board, to Holly, to the public, to help them, I think that's a very good way to go about it.
I think so too. And the other thing is, with your conversations with Mr. Bennett, is how do we, as a town, balance the needs of the town as far as the financial needs? It's, the school budget, it's police, fire, all the town services, right? And everything is going up in prices, right? How do we protect the fixed income folks most? How do we kind of buffer some of that expense?
Yeah.
And there's some ways of doing it, whether it's more in the assessor's overlay, right? More people doing things, what is it called? The work program. All of those things. There's other things that are veterans services related. There's a bunch of different things that can help mitigate some of those additional expenses that somebody who's still working, it's not that big of a deal, but you add $20 or $30 to a fixed income person's budget on a monthly basis, and it makes a huge difference for some.
Of course it does.
So.
I mean, I'm retired, but I still work 10 hours a week, and it makes a huge difference in my,
Your finances.
yeah, it really does. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people my age who are retired who do exactly the same thing. But, all right,
Take care.
why don't we do this? I'll talk with Mr. Bennett. And I will try to define the comp towns. Try to make a listing of some kind of a listing of comp positions. That, just initially set it up. And then we can discuss the initial setup, because I'm sure you'll have suggestions. Either they add or this is redundant, and then maybe go where, we each do a department a month. And make sure you don't do the select board. I'm not gonna do a fire department because of that, but I mean, we can work around that.
Fire department.
Yeah, there you go. So how about if I do that? How about if I try to come up with some kind of a grid or suggestions, and then we go from there.
Okay.
Agreeable?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
This also was, part of, D was elderly benefits. This kind of circles and encompasses that, where Liz just said that, how do we balance the needs of the town and protect the people on the fixed income? It kind of ties into that type of stuff too, because that was part of that table.
What I'll do is I'll come up with the variables, like one of the variables, the percent of the the levy limit, I think that's a very revealing number. I really do when I look at it. But there's also other things like road mileage and what's the average rate of pay for, different folks. And so it's kind of trying to, define the issue and then use the comp towns to plug that in. So I'll try to come up with, the basic data that we want to assemble and then list the comp towns. And then if you want me to change the comp towns, you both might want to look at comp towns, a little bit.
Did that list ever get uploaded? And was it supposed to be approved by the
Yeah.
select board? We approved it, but was it supposed to
I
go?
don't know what the select board.
I think it was supposed to go there next and then,
Our job's to recommend, and basically what we said is, these are the comp towns.
this is
This
updated.
is close, it's up to date.
Here it is.
Yeah, here it is. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell the select board what to do. They have it, we provided it. But I do think that with this is, this is a lot more it's more comprehensive than just the comp towns. And I look at this as hopefully this is a tool that the select board and us and the taxpayers can use, say, to help make decisions.
Yes, exactly.
If we went 5 years back and then 5 years ahead, with the projections, that'd be very helpful.
All right, sounds good. It's a
Okay.
plan.
That's what I'll do. Okay. All right, so that takes care of 7E and 8D.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, 7F, discussion of possible recommendation concerning the regional school agreement, including a possible demand letter recommendations to the Templeton Select Board. And this is from our February 27th meeting. At that time, we discussed this situation at length, and we did send a letter to the select board recommending that they have town council looking into drafting possible demand letter to the town of Fulton. And I'm not sure.
Did we send a letter? I don't know. I don't remember typing that.
And it was the demand, generally speaking, was it saying you gotta sign the agreement, or was it something else? I think that's on topic.
Well, it's basically asking them to, Templeton's ratified the latest agreement, and Dr. Cazavan with a letter a couple months ago, he basically Phillipston to do what Templeton's done. And as far as I know, Phillipston is not ratified of the agreement. So we're really back to where we were. Brought up.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a letter went out to the select board telling them to reach out to town council. I don't remember, could be wrong. I think we talked about it, but I don't know that a letter was. I can go back and look, but.
Are you familiar?
Yeah.
What is your feeling on this? I can tell you what Jacqueline and I feel is that we feel that town council should write a demand letter. Phillipston, asking that they ratify the agreement.
So, yes. So, the history of, which agreement is actually truly the one in effect is, and I forget what the years are, but, is it the one going back that was under review, but it never got signed by Jesse, but it was approved by both towns? Or is it the one before that is education reform. You know, which one, there's a lot of debate. I sit on the, I don't think we have a valid school district. I
Correct.
don't think we do. It's been too many years since the last one. There's too many questions. I, I'm of the opinion that they either take the agreement today, sign it, or we start separating everything out. And that we go our separate ways. Now, there's expenses involved with it. I don't know what they are, but I know there are expenses. But it would put Templeton more in its own, in a little more control of what happens with the school and everything around it. There's, I think, a lot of unknowns and, or, you know, I'm all about pros and cons of things, you know, hey, we, you know, there they are. Let's look at the money, let's look at everything to come up with something that really makes sense, but I don't think we have, I don't think we have one.
I think you do have, because Phillips and children are going to Templeton schools.
I mean,
But-
there's maybe an agreement for the high school, middle school. I don't know that there's really an agreement
For the
who pays for the elementary.
Well, and that's the part that,
Yeah,
Phillipston, I was for a short time involved with the building of, for the potential building of the elementary school. Right, so I was a little bit on the front end, life happened.
Like a study, whether you.
Yeah, life happened, so I couldn't stay involved. Phillipston voted against sending their kids to the new school, elementary school.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, as a society as a whole, we need to educate our children, everyone's children, you know, but I don't think they should be in our school system, in our school, because it is our school. We're paying for it. And we're taking on too much of the financial responsibility for that school. When Phillipston specifically said, I don't want my kids going there. And, okay, then why are they in the school? They're in school because I think the school committee said, yep, send them.
I had a preschooler in Phillipston when this was all happening and there was like signs in the common, save our school and all these things. And it was very evident that they didn't want their school to close.
And they have, you know, and then it's whether or not and you move forward, whether or not the school is technically legally truly closed or not, because it's who has the authority to close that school. I think it was just done. I don't think it was done correctly. Somebody can point me to the error of my ways, you know, but.
I think when it closed, there was only like 58 children attending the building and it was like a financial, like, how are we justifying this?
Right, but at that point, how are we justifying this? Phillips, and you need to figure out what you want to do with your students. It should not have been an automatic, oh, we'll send them to someone.
And they're still actively building houses everywhere in Phillipston. So I imagine it's more than 58 kids now.
Yeah.
Well, my take on this is that the state originally created the authority by statute for regional school districts. And I just feel if Templeton was decided to withdraw, that it would be a huge mistake. Right off the top, you would lose all the school transportation money, which would be well over $1 million. Right off the top, all of a sudden, Templeton would have to pay all of its school transportation monies. The flip side of that coin is, you know, the regional school district just entered into a 5-year contract with the sole bidder with 18% increases every year. So, but having said that, is the state created regional school districts, and the state has always held all the cards. And they have done nothing to try to, this is my opinion, they have done nothing to try to get the towns to settle their differences and create a regional school district that's fair to everybody, and you're not having all this all these issues. And and from my point of view, they've done very little or nothing. And they should be, and they have the authority to do whatever they want.
I disagree,
Okay.
on the grounds that legally, the agreement for the school district is between the two member towns. Legally, that's what it is. It's not, DESI gives it a rubber stamp, they have certain criteria. I don't think they really have the authority. They can't enforce the agreement because they don't have to.
Well, it's an agreement between two towns.
It's a
that-
contract.
That they go in a contract that they can have a regional school district. And then the state, DESI, they fund the regional school district based on their regional school formulas.
But they don't fully fund it and it's not held, not done correctly, and there's a lot of. It's a quagmire.
It
Thank
is
you
a
for
quagmire.
taking on the. You
Well,
know,
it is a
it,
quagmire, but I look at it as, Templeton is troubled financially, and you essentially have, the Phillipston students attending the elementary school in a building that Templeton covers all the tabs for,
Mm-hmm.
and yet 15 or 16% of the students at Phillipston, and proportionately, they should pay
Right.
15 or 16% of the, the bonded indebtedness of that. And it's not fair, to Templeton.
So I asked what the school choice number is. Should they be paying what a school choice rate is? Because if you have a child coming from Gardner, they're paying a price.
But they're not paying, so, and if, I'm a little unclear on this, so. It's like 5.5, 6 grand or something is the school choice that comes from say the sending school,
Mhm.
right? But it costs us, what, $18,000 to educate that child.
Mhm.
It doesn't make good financial sense for us to do that. It just, why are we doing this? I understand the idea that you have a set rate and I get that it's fixed. Yeah, it's fixed, the rationale behind it, but why on earth do we want to pick up that extra 10 grand in expenses on each child? I have yet to see anybody explain to me the benefit of us doing that. Oh, it's school choice. Yeah, so people come in, people don't want to go out usually, right? So we spend more money, our classrooms are more filled, more crowded. So that comes into play, the fact that we've incurred all of the debt on the elementary school,
Mhm.
right? They're not paying their fair share. I understand Phillipston has a higher tax rate than we do, and they end up paying on an individual household basis. I think they end up paying more per household than Templeton residents do. I feel for them, but we got to take care of our own first, and our own is taking care of our town. Our own is taking care of the people in the town, and as we have the ability to be able to help the others, then we help.
Put your oxygen mask on before helping others.
Exactly. And we keep doing this, I look at some of the agreements we have with different towns and different things, especially with Phillipston on certain things. And it's like, we're supporting Phillipston. And reading through the finance book, I can't, the MMA's finance guide. I discovered in there that the state of Massachusetts at any point in time can basically say, yeah, we're doing away with this. You Templeton and Phillipston go back to being one town. And they can just do it. And I'm like, I wonder what that would.
They might be able to do it, but
They wouldn't,
it would have to go through the legislature.
Yeah,
and
it
it would never go
but-
through the legislature.
I will say that I've heard that what's happening is unprecedented, and DESI doesn't have any guidance. They don't know what to tell us. I've also it's my understanding and my opinion and my belief that the messiness of the situation with the school district makes us very undesirable for any other towns to want to pair up, join up, meet up, help out. Even ones that are further underwater than we are like, no thanks. because of what's
It's
going
a
on.
long-term problem, because I've had a conversation with John Zlotnick, which I've discussed in public before, and he feels, and he could be wrong, I happen to think that he's right, is that the state really wants to go and fund. The bigger you are, the better. And, you know, the more regional towns we have, so that means that down the road, and it may not happen, but down the road is, you might, you know, that they will fund a lot more favorably a district that will include Athol, Royalston, Winchendon, Templeton, Phillipston, maybe even Gardner, you know, just a big, you know, a big district. Big district, that, you know, that is, you know, John feels that that is, you know, thinking of, you know, among, you know, members of the legislature when they sit down and talk about, you know, the issue of funding regional schools. The bigger down the road, the bigger will be better.
And,
And that doesn't, what we're doing right now doesn't fit with being bigger.
yeah,
It's people running.
yeah,
Right.
people running, yeah,
Yeah.
and giving away. The other thing, I could be wrong, but I believe that if we were to disband the district, all of the contracts are with a legal entity of the Narragansett Regional School District. So what happens is they all go away, everything gets renegotiated. Everything.
But you
So,
also might have litigation over that too.
well, you might, but if you don't have an entity, you don't have an entity. The school district doesn't exist. And that's the argument I would make is it's no longer a legal entity. And,
It's a contract, yes, but there's also in contract law, the idea of equity and quantum narrow it, which is,
well, we don't have.
it would
the equity.
result in litigation, it
Yeah.
would result in litigation.
We don't have the equity, right now. And it's in Phillipson's best interest to not sign an agreement.
Yes, it is. I
So,
think they're being very clever about it,
you know,
but
you know, the number of meetings where members of Phillipston did not show up.
Yeah.
For those meetings. And it's. So that's why I go back to, I don't think we have an agreement, because they're basically sitting there holding their breath. Sorry, guys, but that's what you're doing, in my opinion.
all right.
But, so,
I
yeah,
think
okay.
what if any, the further discussion or possible recommendation should we make?
I think we should,
What do you think? we should
I
do?
think we should move forward with, asking the select board to reach out to town council. I don't think we did that. I think it was words and nothing ever moved.
What I also could do is I could change the posting
Mm.
and have this discussed at the joint meeting. You know, maybe it should be a topic of discussion at the joint meeting.
That's probably a good idea because, I mean, we're gonna be sitting here, March will come very soon and we'll be in the same.
Because at the end of the day, we're a recommending body, and if
Right.
the select board is not interested in proceeding, well, you know, that kind of ends it right there.
They should be, because I feel like that's one of this, it's one of the biggest problems every year. And when Mr. Moser resigned, that was like, he made a very big point saying that the school is going to bankrupt the town in not so many words. And that,
Well, he's right.
these things, this needs to be like worked on yesterday.
They do, and I agree with Mr. Moser, because, you know, what the school committee can demand that Templeton pay $1 million a year forever into the future, and what we paid last year is I think going to result in an exodus of students, maybe 5 or 6 years down the road if we keep doing that. I really believe that, but the town, you know, Mr. Moser is right, the town will be bankrupted.
Mhm.
Be in receivership, or I don't know, it's just a, you know, very bad scenario. So,
So let's,
do you want me to change the posting so that this is an item of discussion next week when we meet jointly?
Sure, sounds good.
All right, why don't we do that? I'll ask Kelsey, tomorrow's Friday, I'll ask Kelsey on Monday to change the posting.
it needs to be first and Monday.
Yes.
Actually, the posting, I just was checking my email, it's not the same as this, by the way, so maybe you want to check your emails. There's a
Check it
couple,
tonight.
things missing. I made a little note.
All right, then I'll change the posting. Is that agreeable?
Yep.
to-
Yes.
Thank you. The next item, 7G, discussion and possible recommendation concerning the Lunenburg Select Board letter to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts seeking an increase in state local aid. This was brought up by Jacqueline
The
on April
The
3rd.
letter I sent never made it into the packet. Unfortunately, I emailed it with the meeting minutes and it never, there was a letter that I typed on our letterhead that we were gonna discuss for you to possibly sign. If you want me to read it, I can read
Sure.
it, or,
So why don't you read it? Really, I want to make sure that Liz understands the
Yes.
issue as presented and
Yep.
kind of bring her up to speed. Can you just talk, you were the one who.
yes, so, back in, I guess, end of March or April, Lunenburg Select Board sent a demand letter essentially to the Commonwealth and their representatives and their state senators saying that they needed more money. And I don't know if it never went anywhere, but I thought it was a good idea because I thought you could literally delete the word Lunenburg and put Templeton in.
Works for me.
And so I typed up a letter and on our letterhead for Noel to sign that I was hoping we were gonna vote on. Yes, the letter says to the select board members, please be advised that at our meeting held on Thursday, April 3rd, 2025, we voted 4-1 to recommend to the select board that letters of advocacy for additional local aid to Templeton be written to Senator Peter Durant and Representative Jonathan Zlotnick. This recommendation comes after reading that the town of Lunenburg wrote a letter to their own senator and representatives asking for advocacy. We are recommending that a similarly worded letter be drafted and sent on the town of Templeton letterhead. Please see the letter from Lunenburg attached, and it had a picture of the letter.
If you're looking for a motion, I'm happy to give you one.
Okay, I will second it, based on the text of that letter.
Okay,
Yes.
so just to, I mean, honestly, it just needs to be printed and signed and you need to hand it off. Is that the
Yeah,
motion?
Yeah, print it, yeah, print it, I'll sign it and I'll deposit it, on
Okay.
Monday.
All right,
Just,
so,
just make sure that Liz gets a copy.
yep, absolutely.
It should be attached.
What are we on, G?
Meeting minutes anyways.
Yeah.
This.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, it was supposed to be in the packet. I emailed it, but. So,
So moved. So.
seconded by me.
Second by you. And
Okay,
we'll vote.
all right, I'll do a roll call vote. Jacqueline?
Yes,
Yes.
I also vote yes. You okay on your notes?
yep.
All right, thank you. Okay, next item, new business. I just, the May 2025 budget versus actuals just arrived
I
and
saw.
printed off this morning. I did have a chance to, go through it. What was just so you know how we proceed with budgets, review of budgets versus actuals is we a member will ask that a particular item on a page, what the item is, and then we may have a question about. So we kind of go down, item by item, and then we, we come up with a letter which we send to the town administrator. And they generally respond in a couple of weeks, and then that response goes into the record of the next meeting. So I guess my question to both of you is, I did look through it. Did you have a chance to look through at least the April, Liz?
I did, and there was. What I see happening is, I see different percent. So what I did was I looked through and I did this for February, previously. and looking at April, is that if you go with a straight 12% each month, you should be sitting at roughly 83% spent across
Yep.
all the different parts of the budget, right? And there are, some that are really high, some that are really low. I didn't want to get into really specifics at this point on these, beyond the fact that I need to understand the process behind the numbers. But my concern is that there are a bunch of things that are sitting out here that have very low percentage spent. Right?
That's, that's usually the situation that results in a letter to the town administrator about why is this such a low percent? That's probably the number one concern that we have. What I would suggest is June is the end of the fiscal year. And we're going to meet sometime in July, and what I was thinking of is maybe we could devote a whole meeting to, the whole year. If it was an actual. Could all come up with a list, then
What,
they'll come,
'cause at this point in the year, right? As I said, we should be at 83%. What isn't included in the budget books is department heads' estimate of how much percentage wise they're gonna spend month over month. Because there's, go back for a few years, Mr. Mayo was,
LMA.
yeah, LMAO, right? And there was a question, I just remember this thing so clearly. There was a question coming up where, but you haven't spent your budget here yet, right? We're gonna take that. And he's like, no. I'm buying 2 new pieces of equipment in this month, right? Whatever the month was, right? And that's what I'm gonna end up using all my money for that. So it's timing issues, right? And, some departments may be pretty much just every, 12%, 12%, yeah, every single month, whatever it is, right? And, 12% is right, whatever the percentage is. And going through. And I'd like to understand that a little bit better, because a lot of the questions I have would be eliminated if I understand what their spend plan is. And I don't understand what the spend plan is, so.
Why don't we do this, why don't we defer this to the July meeting? Is that okay with you?
Yep.
And then we'll have a meeting in the latter part of July. After the full year. The full year budget versus actual comes out, the year ending June 30th. And, then, we can ask questions. I would be glad to work with you as to, your initial questions. I could try to answer them, and then if I can't answer them, then we can put it on the list. What I've done in the past is I've come up with a list, page number, amount, and reason. And so you can do that as well. And then we would submit that to Holly, and then, hopefully get an answer back in a week or two. And if it's an item, like one of the things we did with the February BDA is, there were a lot of things that Melanie caught. So because you did that, that line by line, she had some really good catches, so.
What was the hours that took you?
Yeah, that was.
I
Yeah, I couldn't believe her.
literally took the budget books, printed out the budget books, compared them to what was here, and I literally went through and taken the time, everything through.
Okay.
And I looked at the percentages, and then I looked at those more closely to figure out what we were doing. And it's just my day job. And
Yeah, you must enjoy the numbers.
I enjoy the analytical process.
So are you okay with doing that? Just that way in July, we do a real thorough, have a very, very thorough list and we submit to Holly at that time.
I mean, because some of just, and I don't need for you to take notes on this, but some of the things that, I was looking at is how much money, different support, it's like committee support for ourselves, employee support, purchases of services. It's like, okay, well, what's included in purchase of services? So I go back and look at the budget book to figure out, all right, what's
Yeah.
really included in this number? And, and some things that just haven't been spent. Listening to some of the select board meetings, it sounds like they're not gonna be spent. So,
Well, what happens is that, a lot of money does not get spent, and a perfect example would be the end of year transfer, where there's two requests for $4,000 and $6,000. And it's coming from, Mr. Sosick's, highway personnel count, and it's out of, I believe it's a tree laborer or tree trimmer laborer that position was funded but not filled. So there's $50,000 or $60,000 there. So that's where the $10,000 is going to be taken out of, is that. So, able to do the transfer. So you will see at the end of the year a lot of those kind of numbers. The biggest number in there year in and year out is the fire department call amount. I think last year it was $10,000. I'm sure it'll be a similar number this year. You don't know how often you're gonna have a fire. It's a variable number. But I found consistently the last 2 or 3 years is return. That's been the biggest single dollar return if you look at the budget book.
yeah,
So why don't, I would suggest that we do this. If we will get probably by the 10th, 12th of July, we'll get the full year budget versus actual.
Mhm.
If we hold the meeting late enough in July, we'd have the full year, and then we should have just June as well. But we'll have the full year, which is the
If you're looking at like dates for later in July, just so you know, like my calendar fills up like, months ago, but I have for Thursdays, the 24th or the 31st are days available. So I don't know if we want to discuss possibly just putting a pencil or a bookmark or a tick mark, or
yeah. Well,
because it is the summer.
Yeah, it is somewhat can be difficult. How about if I look, whether this one was booked for the 24th? Is that a Thursday?
They're both Thursdays. The 24th and the 31st are both Thursdays.
All right, how about if I look at those two dates and find out the availability of not only the room but of TCTV. All right, and I'll get back to both of you.
Mhm.
can I ask,
Sure.
related to the budget, so this is
Yeah.
educate Liz time.
No, it's fine.
So, it's like looking at the ARPA funds, right? There's money. Having not been spent yet,
Right.
sitting in the ARPA funds.
I can tell you why in a general way.
Yeah,
In a general way, what is happening is a lot of the ARPA monies are for new pieces of equipment. And unfortunately, it can take 2 or 3 years to purchase a new piece of equipment. So it has to be spec'd out. It just takes a long time. So when you look at the ARPA fund, I would look first to, is this a piece of equipment?
Yeah.
That may have been purchased in principle, but the vendor may not have asked for the money yet. There's that kind of
I don't know what the timelines are, but I know there are timelines related to the ARPA funds. I know the first one was you had to have it under contract by X date.
Yeah, we've met that. All the ARPA money has been spent. That's not an issue. And they do allow you, the federal government does allow the town. You make a commitment, I believe it was by December 31st of last year, so that the money is committed, but to actually spend it, there's still a time lag to it, which is why you see the money on the books. And, now the question becomes, is why we raised the issue of, we've had this ARPA money on the books, presumably invested.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is, and I see two,
So you can see how they're related, you can see how those two items are related.
Yeah, it's like the dump truck, right? There's one, I guess, looks like it's in, but there's 15 grand left over. The other
Yeah.
one looks like it hasn't come in yet, it hasn't been spent, nothing.
The 15 grand as well, it might be, DPW has the truck, but they still need to. I'm just throwing this out, they may have to accessorize it with a radio, for example, or
Something like that.
accessorize it some way, which would eat up virtually all of 15 grand.
You know, we've got a couple months left to go, and it's like I'm looking at the sewer personnel, and it's 93% consumed already, you know. No vacations, does that come out of that account? I don't know. So it's those are the kinds of questions that I have.
Yeah.
And then the whole idea of the trust funds. And how do we do something with those?
Yeah.
And that's really the extent of it.
Okay.
I had looked,
Well, why don't
Yeah.
you do this, when we get, I'll work out a meeting for either July 24th.
I'll figure it all out.
July 31st, and then you would have had a chance to do it. You could certainly meet with me. It's not an open meeting law violation, and we could go over the questions that you have, and I could explain. Some of the questions that, the answers as best I can, and if I can't, then that's what would go on the list.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, so that's what we're gonna do. Okay, 8. I wanna go to 8C. Because I don't know if any of you received this, but I did receive an email from Jackie Klein.
Did it go to the advisory email or just to you?
It went. I don't know, it looks like it went to the website and then got transmitted to me. But in any event, it appears from reading this that the bid opening is going to be to the.
Perfect.
So it looks like it's gone out to bid. I think that is your.
Fabulous.
basic
That
reason
was-
for putting
yep,
this on the
that was.
agenda. So I received that. It looks like the project's going to go out to bid. I don't think we have to do anything more.
It would be nice if we could put that procurement officer that you've talked about somewhere. Find the budget for that.
No, we need it.
Yeah.
It takes too long for the town to do things, it really does, and this is an example of it
Mhm.
taking a long time. So. So anyway, that's why she brought it up was.
I want our library.
She was concerned that I wasn't going up to bid, and.
I love our library.
It is.
I spend a lot of time there and I want it to be cool, not be 112 degrees.
All right, so anyway, I want to put 8C
Perfect.
about the Boyne Library. I want to put that to bed. And which leaves the final item. 8B. And again, I want to make sure that you are, I think you're familiar with it, but at the annual town meeting, there was the issue raised about sewer department billing issues related to whether or not there are liens or how we can collect past due accounts. Today I had a conversation with John Driscoll about this issue, and it looks like this is an issue that has come up over the past 20 years, several different times. And I think there needs to be some kind of a collaboration between John or John's board and the sewer department, or their board and the select board, and Holly as to the billing issue. One of the sticking points in the past was the cost of actually performing the billing, and I believe it seems like this seems like when the light department has done this way in the past, that they have billed the sewer department and the sewer department balked at that. And so they ended up doing the billing on their own. I think, I'm just trying to think about this in terms of what is best for the town. And it seems like there needs to be, collaboration and discussion, between the light, the electric light department, sewer department, and the select board and Holly as to, if the sewer department should continue to bill on its own, or if the light department should sewer department billing, and how the costs are going to be allocated. And I think that just to make some kind of a recommendation tonight would just open up a can of worms without all these involved parties with skin in the game, so to speak, without them meeting and trying to hash this out.
Is it allowable, possible for all of the different parties that the advisory committee, I'll say, hosts a meeting with everybody involved with a one topic item, which is, let's solve this one problem. And everybody comes with their appropriate number of people and it with their quorums and everything, and kind of, I'm all for efficiency, and if we can get it done and one event is supposed to talking about it a whole bunch.
I would be willing, as long as I'm chair, I'd be willing to, have, to gather these people together and have a meeting with just that one issue. Like,
Yeah.
that's a good.
Just the one issue, and
And ask, and on the basis of that meeting, frame a recommendation.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to do it. Is I think if we recommend one thing, might work for the John Driscoll and the light department, but might not work for the sewer department. And if we recommend another thing, it may work for the sewer department, but not the town. It's just a lot of moving parts.
there are, even including the select board, so everybody understands. It's like, I would like to understand what the difficulty is with doing something. Why is this been kicked down the road for 20 years? I'm not looking to blame, I'm not looking to point fingers. I'm trying to understand the challenges related with it. I get two different bills. The sewer bill, if you don't pay the sewer bill, you still get your water. Right. And the sewer doesn't, it just does whatever it does, right?
Well, apparently at one time, 25 years ago, it was all under one umbrella. You get a water bill, a sewer bill, electric bill, they're all combined. You either get one bill or be one entity. Now you have it split up. I think it is best for the town to just have one umbrella entity the way they did, 25 years ago. But the fly in the ointment is that, boards change on the electric department, boards change on the sewer department. They're governed by separate state statutes. It can be a quagmire. And it's an issue that's gone, one way or the other. I mean, at one time you had, the unitary billing, and then
I don't understand why you wouldn't, because
I don't
the
understand.
expenses, so putting my efficiency hat on, I would expect one system handles all of it. You get one bill, so there's a lower cost, I'll say overall. The people who have private water and well, they don't care, I say probably 99.9% of people in town have an electric bill, right? Why not do just,
I think the rub is that, say you would go back to just unitary billing is apparently, and I may be wrong, but just looking at this, is apparently in the past there was a conversion of billing systems, and there were arguments over how that cost of different billing systems, or incorporating two billing systems into one, is who's going to pay for that cost? And there's a cost, and it could be a substantial cost, the $40,000 to $50,000 range. So we're not talking about a simple conversion. It could be kind of an expensive conversion in the short run, but in the long run, would be better, I think it would be better for the town. And that's what I'm not sure of, is what is the cost? And how we came, exactly how we came about doing it that way today.
What was the rationale behind separating everything out? You know, and it could be almost any reason. It could be personalities, town politics, it could be regulatory, it could be almost anything.
Well, I think one of the drivers of the change was that there was a change in the board, I believe, of the sewer department. And that, that board decided to go in a different direction.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
my best guess, but I think that the way to do this is that either us or the select board is, one of us, I think we're the two bodies in town that can do it, but we really need to have a hearing where all the interested parties can sit down and talk this through and collaborate
And come to a consensus on a plan on how to fix the underlying issue. You know, and maybe there's another solution there that somebody might have that gets us to the end result of people super bills. And with the state laws being what they are now, you know, taking a house for back taxes or some of the other things is very expensive, very risky. There's a lot of gotchas in there now that there wasn't before.
and the other problem is if somebody doesn't pay a sewer bill and then they cut off their water, I'm sure the state law is about, going through that. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of moving parts. And I would like to make an informed recommendation that, through collaboration is agreeable to everybody, and we're nowhere near there yet. What would you like me to do? Would you like me to talk with Mr. Bennett about, perhaps a joint meeting or getting the parties together, as a starting point?
Sounds good to
Jacqueline,
me.
you-
Yeah,
And hopefully we can get everybody together and at least come to an understanding of what the problem is, whether or not it can be solved
Right,
that night or at least a plan to solve it.
okay. That's what we will do. We now come to the number of comments, part. Let's start with you, Jacqueline. Do you have any comments that you wish to?
I would like to welcome Liz. And with that being said, we also have a couple empty chairs here. And this would be a good time for anybody who likes to speak out at town meetings or come here to advise or to come to select board meetings and has a lot of things that they would like to get off their chest, maybe to come fill a seat here and join us and dip your toes in the water in some of the town government related items and let your voice be heard, because we're looking for some people to join us.
Thank you. Do you have any comments you would like to make?
Ditto to all the same, thank you. Thank you for a very warm welcome. I expect the next year to be a lot of new learning on things. There's a lot here and it's like a full uphill thing. Hopefully I won't ask too many really silly questions. And I would really like to be able to make a positive difference to the town finances and give back. So, I think it'll be a good year. I think there's a lot of work ahead. And it's gonna be good. And I realize it's just the advisory advises. It's what the committee does. So, it's like, hey, can you look at this? Hey, can you do this? Hey, so just thank you very much. Again, thank you for the warm welcome. And there'll be plenty of let's educate Liz time. Learning opportunities. Thank you.
Again, I just would like to, repeat what Jacqueline said is, thank you for agreeing to take on this. You're gonna find you work about 100 hours a year, and the town hasn't changed the contribution to the 401k plan now that I know of. Anyway, but thank you very much, and I think we had some great discussions tonight. If you folks out there in the public, we're looking for two members. I'm very, I'm very grateful for the contributions that John Caplis made in the past year, and also Julie Richard. We both made a lot of contributions, and I'm going to miss them. I do hope that folks step forward or fill the empty slots. And with that, with that comment, I like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
And I second that.
Hey, I'll do a roll call vote, Jacqueline.
Yes.
Yes.
And I also vote yes.